go from being one of the popular kids to being the most hated kid in school. So you're probably wondering how I managed to take such a drastic dive in popularity. I'm going to tell you all about it. All through school, I had a great group of friends. I never had to worry about being teased or not fitting in. I worked hard to maintain my good grades, but I also played hard too. I loved a good party, and I was always the last one left on the dance floor. The day my social status changed dramatically started like a regular day. My best friend Becca picked me up, and we got drive-through coffee on the way to school. She managed to bag the last parking space in the car park, and we made it to class just before the bell went off. Pretty normal stuff, right? Well, it was, at first. Everything changed when I was excused from class to go to the bathroom. I didn't need the bathroom. I just wanted to get out of math class as it was beyond boring. As I walked up the empty hallway, I took my time. I was in no rush to get back to that boring lesson. I turned the corner and spotted two boys I knew called Dean and Riley standing next to the fire alarm. Both of these boys were very popular, especially Dean. He was more of an acquaintance than a friend of mine, but I knew that Becca had the biggest crush on him. I wasn't all that keen on him, as he was a massive troublemaker that was always in detention for being rude to a teacher, cheating in exams, or bullying the younger kids. When Riley saw me, he patted Dean's shoulder. He looked over at me, grinned, and then placed his fingers to his lips and said, "Shush." Before I could even process what was going on, Dean set off the fire alarm, then they both ran off. Next thing I knew, there was a loud ringing sound, and then the hallways filled with kids and teachers. I joined the crowd and followed them out into the yard. My math teacher must have told the principal that I'd gone to the restroom when the alarm had gone off, as I was called into his office. He started grilling me, going on and on about how I was the only student who wasn't in class at the time. I thought I was going to get into serious trouble for something I hadn't even done. He ran his receptionist up and instructed her to call my parents. Before I could stop myself, I blurted out, "It wasn't me! It was Dean and Riley!" It turns out that Dean and Riley had been planning it for ages. They'd snuck into school unnoticed and hadn't signed in at registration, so they could set the alarm off without anyone knowing it was them. Riley was suspended for a week, but Dean, who was already on his last warning, ended up being expelled. News of what I'd done spread, and I went from popular to zero in less than a day. Becca instantly stopped talking to me. It didn't matter how many times I messaged her and tried to explain. She didn't want to know. One by one, the other kids from school unfriended and unfollowed me. The next day in class, no one spoke to me. I mean, no one. It was horrible. For the next few weeks, I felt completely alone and isolated. No one would sit next to me in class, or at lunch, or anywhere. I may as well have been invisible. My parents went away for the weekend, so I decided to throw a party. I believed that the kids from school wouldn't be able to resist a house party with no adults about and free drinks. Seeing as I had no one from school on social media anymore, I stuck party invites in all of my old friends' lockers. I spent all Saturday getting my house ready. I put snacks out, made a playlist of Becca's favorite songs, and even raided my parents' drinks cabinet so there would be alcohol there. I know this was wrong of me, but at this point, I was just so desperate to have friends again that I believed being grounded for a month would be worth it. I waited for kids to show up. It grew later and later, but I told myself that kids were always late to parties, right? The pizza turned soggy, my homemade punch remained untouched, and my house stayed empty except for me. I was probably the only kid ever who'd thrown a party with free drinks, and no one had showed up. My parents came back the next morning and found me still sat at the kitchen table next to the uneaten pizza. I had tear-stained cheeks, and I must have looked like a complete mess. I burst into a fresh bout of tears and told my parents everything. They were furious with the school for putting me in this situation, and my dad rang my principal. Not that he seemed to care. I took the next week off school, and over that time, I did some serious thinking. When I went back in on Monday, I didn't feel sad anymore. Instead, I felt angry. In English class, the teacher tried to pair me up with Becca for a project, and she refused to be my partner. I saw red, shoved my chair back, stood up, and marched to the front of the class. Yes, I told the principal who set the fire alarm off, but I only did this as I was being blamed for something I didn't do. Did Dean and Riley care that their stupid prank would mess up my life? No. Of course not. Did Dean and Riley care that this would mess up their lives? No, of course they didn't. It was their choice to set the alarm off, not mine. Dean did this knowing full well that he was on his last warning. I'm sick of being blamed by all of you for something that wasn't my fault. After that, I stormed out of the classroom. It felt so good to tell everyone how I felt. Becca still doesn't talk to me, and neither do most of the other kids, but I don't care anymore. A quiet girl from my class did start talking to me and invited me to have lunch with her and her friends. I might not be popular anymore, but I now realize how little that matters. Luckily, I only have a few more months left of school, and then I'm off to college. Thanks for listening to my story. I know I'm the girl who went from popular to the most hated girl in school in a day. Crazy, huh? The thing is that I know that it wasn't my fault. We all have decisions to make in life, and what Dean and Riley chose to do wasn't down to me. That was their choice. Please leave a comment if you think that I did the right thing in standing up for myself, and that it was wrong of people to use me as a scapegoat for the actions of others.